All right, so today we are going to cover animating in After Effects. If you haven't watched day one, I advise you go ahead and watch day one. You know, what's the aim of this tutorial? The aim of this tutorial is to help editors, that do not have any idea of how to animate in After Effects, to get them to know how stuff moves and how animation works really. So today we are going to touch on the graph editor. Now, the graph editor is the most important part of animation. And if you don't understand this particular video I'm going to show you right now, I would advise you watch it over and over again until you have a full understanding of it. Because if you don't, trust me, every other thing you're going to learn in animation is a waste of your time. Today, I'm going to show you how to move stuff from point A to point B. So, first of all, we have 3 balls here in order 1, 2, 3. And if you check our layer stack here, we have 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to move this to the top, 1 on top, 2 in the middle, and 3. So we have 1, you can see 1, 2, you can see 2, 3, you can see 3. Now, in order for you to move, I want to move this ball 1 from here to here. How do we do that? When you click on a layer and you click this arrow button here to open the layer, you're going to see something called transform. Now, transform comes with a lot of properties called anchor point, position, scale, skew axis, rotation, opacity. In this case, all we want is to work on the position because we're moving it from here to here. That's all we are doing. Now, if I close this and I hit P on my keyboard, letter P, I will have only the position keyframe showing up. And what I want to do is between 0 and I would say 10 frames, not 10 frames, 20 frames. This is the first position. So I'm going to click this stopwatch. And you can see that it adds a keyframe here. This is what we call a keyframe. You can see this dot here. It adds a keyframe. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go 10 frames forward. Now, for me to go 10 frames forward, I can use this to zoom in and out of my timeline. If you watch the first video, you should understand that part. Now, for me to go 10 frames forward, what I need to do is to hold Control Shift on my keyboard, then right arrow direction. 1, that's 10 frames. You see, we are very close to 12. We are 2 steps away from 12. And then once again, and then we have 20 frames. Okay? So I went 10 frames from here and another 10 frames. So that's I went 20 frames from here. So I'm here now on the timeline. But I've not done anything. Now, if I hold this ball and I move it, do you see it automatically adds a keyframe here? I'm going to go back, Control Z. Now I'm going to hold this ball and I'm going to press Shift to keep it on a straight line, to force it to be on a straight line. And I'm going to move it all the way over here. So it moves from here to here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stand somewhere here on 1 second. And I'm going to press the key N on my keyboard. N, letter N. What have I done now? I want to preview this, but I want it to only preview at this point, to only preview this section and come back to start again. That's why I'm putting it at N. If I keep this at this level, it's going to preview all the way to 2 seconds before it comes back here. So let's see how that works. Let me keep it somewhere here. Can you see? Can you see? Okay. Now, the next thing you want to understand is this. Let's zoom into these lines. I'm on my Z. I choose my Z key. I click once. I click twice. Z key again. I hold Alt to zoom out. And we are zoomed in. Can you see that? If you notice, if you zoom into these lines, right? If you zoom into this line, you notice that they are dots. This dot tells you what the ball is going to be doing per frame. 1. The next frame is going to go to the next dot. Yeah. The next dot, the next dot. Now, what is the logic behind these dots? Right now, all these dots are spaced out equally because we are on a keyframe format called the linear keyframes. We are on the linear keyframes. Now, the logic behind these dots once again is that when all these dots are spaced out equally, the ball is going to move at a constant speed from point A to point B. There's going to be no change in the speed at any point. Now, the next thing you have to understand is beyond linear keyframe, there is another kind of keyframe called the easy ease keyframes. Okay, if I right click here and I go to keyframe assistant and I say easy ease, you can see the short form for that is F9, and I say easy ease, you see that the keyframe changes to a sort of this weird looking funny stuff, this sand stuff, the sand icon. Now, if you see, can you notice that the way my stuff was spaced has changed? Some here are more closer to each other, while the ones towards the middle are more spaced out. The logic behind these dots is that when they are more closer to each other, your object is going to slow down, and when they are far away from each other, your object is going to move quickly. Now, let me show you what that means, what that looks like. Can you see? There is a little bit of slowdown towards the end because the dots at the end are more closer. Now, in order for us to manipulate these dots to tell After Effects, I want this object to slow down at this point and to speed up at this point, we have to use the graph editor. How do we access the graph editor? Click this button here. Click your keyframes first of all, select your keyframes and click this button here. You see we have our graph editor. Now, when the graph is this, we have two kinds of graph in After Effects. So if you're in the graph editor, right click and make sure that you are selecting speed graph, not value graph, speed graph. Okay. Now, what you have to understand is that when the graph is high at this point, this indicates that this is the fastest point that the ball is. Now, when the graph is low at this point, this is the point where there is a slowdown effect. And if you notice at this point, at this part of the animation, the dots are closer to each other. So there is a slowdown. Okay. At this point, the graph is so high up in the air, you know, to indicate a high value. Think of your normal graphs. And at this point, again, where the graph is going down to a stop, you notice that the dots are closer to each other. Now, if I want the dots to be closer to each other towards the end more, I'm going to select this graph and I want you to watch these dots as I do this. I'm going to hold my shift and I'm going to move this. Can you see that the more I did that, can you see how more pushed these dots are to the side? Can you see how pushed they are to the side? Now, if I were to preview this, let's see how the motion has changed. Can you see it starts slowing down towards the end drastically? Can you see? Now, if you notice at this point, this is where the graph is spaced out the most. See the distance between these 2 points. This is the point of the highest speed of movement here. You can barely catch the ball in this moment, what it's doing. But when it comes here towards the end, it slows down and you can see it. I don't know if that makes sense. If you have any questions about that, you can ask in the comment section. Once again, if I want a slowdown towards the beginning, I can also pull this graph like this. And you see, we have a huge slowdown at the beginning, and then we have a speed up at this point. That means between this point and this point, the ball is going to be very fast. Let's see how that looks. Can you see? Very fast, but at the end is very slow, and at the beginning is very slow. Okay. So the graph determines how the ball is going to look when it's moving, how the easing is going to look. Okay. Now, what the keyframe does is it tells the object when you are going, this is where you start and this is where you end. If you keep adding more keyframes, the ball will keep moving according to those keyframes that you are adding. But the graph tells you how do you want your animation to feel. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold my control key and click the keyframes after selecting them, and they're going to go back to linear keyframes. Can you see? Can you see how they looked? Once I click them to go back to linear keyframes, holding my control key, can you see how they are back to normal? Now, what I want to do is I want to animate all of these balls. So I'm going to press my P once again. I'm going to go all the way down here, and I'm going to push this one down here as well. I'm going to hold my P on the third ball. I'm going to come all the way down here. I'm going to push all of this down here. Please, this tutorial, this part of animation is the most important aspect of animation. Now, these three balls right now are all moving at a constant speed. Can you see? They are all going together. Can you see what's happening? They are all going together. Now, to show you that what the graph can do, I'm going to ease. I'm going to ease this keyframe. I'm going to go into this keyframe assistance, and I'm going to ease it. And you're going to see how that's going to change how the ball is moving. Okay? Can you see? Can you see by just easing the keyframes, it changed the way the ball is moving. Now, the truth is that animation is just an illusion. It's just a bunch of images moving every frame. So this is one image, this is two images, three images, four images, this 5 image, this 6 image, you know. Now, it is the placement of these images that creates a slowdown or a speed up. So if this image is closer to the previous one, it's going to look like it's slow. If this image, if the next image that is going to happen is going to be somewhere here, for this particular ball, if it's going to be somewhere here, it's going to create the illusion of speed, because coming from here to here is a big distance, but coming from here to here is a smaller distance. You understand? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the last graph. I'm going to ease it. I'm going to go into my graph editor, and I'm going to create this. Now, if you look at this, let's go to the beginning. Observe. Let's move forward. To move forward on the timeline, you can either hold this play button and drag, or you can press your control and right button to move on the timeline. Now, I'm going to count all the way to frame 5, and let's see how much movement each of these balls did. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, for ball 1 has already gotten here because it's on a linear keyframe. Okay. Ball 2, look at the graph editor for position keyframe. Can you see how the graph is? Ball 2 has already made it here. But ball 3 at frame 5 is still almost at the beginning. It's still almost at the beginning. But when you notice the dots on ball 3, you're going to see that at this point, there is a big jump from here to here. So let's move another 5 keyframes and see how far the balls go. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Do you see that at 10, ball 3 overtakes everybody? That is why I try to explain to you that the graph determines how the animation feels. Okay? Now let's watch it again. Can you see? Let's watch all of them. Now, here's the thing. When I said animation is an illusion, these balls all start together on frame 1 and all end at the same time on frame 20. Okay? Now, I want us to watch this animation frame by frame. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Do you see how ball 3 slowed down at this point, but it never touched this line here. It never touched this line. It had to wait for everybody to meet it. Even when you come to 19, it shifted a little bit. Can you see? 20, it touched it properly. Now, if you notice, I zoom into the composition, I zoom into these images and I zoom out. I'm using my Z key to zoom. And then when I want to get it back to full screen, I press my Shift and / on my keyboard, /. Okay, or if you don't want to do that, what you can do is if you zoom in, click on this button and say fit to 100% and it will come back on screen. Okay, so now I'm going to also ease ball 1. I'm going to ease it and I'm going to pull the easing like this. Now, what am I telling After Effects? I'm telling it slow down all the way here, but when it comes to the end, pick up the speed so fast because the graph is laying on the ground. The graph here is laying on the ground. This is the point of highest speed. So I'm saying slow me down and then pick up speed over here. You can see the line, so you should already know what that movement is going to look like. Can you see? And all of them are still meeting. Can you see at this point, see how backward this ball is? But at point 30, it reaches at the same time. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to preview this so it loops. Let me just give it 1 frame to sit. You know what, let's just keep it here so you can see how it lands. So do you see how the graph has made these 3 animations to look different? I can also come over here, click this graph editor, pull this to the side, and pull this to the side. And what I'm telling After Effects is that at the beginning, make it very fast, but towards the end, make it very slow. So it's like fast to slow. Do you see how much speed it picks up at the beginning? Like frame 1, it has already gone very far before any other person could move. But it comes and slows down and everybody meets up at the same time at 20. So that is that about the graph editor. The graph editor just tells you how stuff should feel when it's moving. The keyframes over here tell you, like, this is beginning, this is point A, this is point B. You know, if you come over here for this ball and you add another point and you do this, it's going to add another keyframe and you're going to see something like this. Okay, so it's just like the graph is telling you point A and the keyframes are telling you go from point A to point B, but the graph is telling you when you are going from point A to point B, this is how I want you to feel. So I hope that makes sense. We are going to go now into the next part called timing versus spacing. Okay, welcome once again. We are back. We're going to talk about timing versus spacing. And we have already done timing versus spacing here, but I'm going to explain it to you. Timing versus spacing. What does timing mean? Timing simply means how long is the animation going to take. In this case, we determined that how long the animation is going to take is 20 frames. That's the timing of this animation. Now, spacing is how is this animation going to feel. Now, in some cases, after adjusting the spacing of an animation, we see ourselves having the need to adjust the timing. Timing simply means how long. Spacing simply means how does it feel. Spacing is how these dots are spaced within the time that the animation is happening. So this is 20 frames timing. but the spacing is different from this one, and the spacing of this one is different from this one. So now we have everything on 20 frames. And you see that the spacing is different. Now, let me switch all of this off using this my eye icon. Let me switch these two down and let's work with only this one. Now, what I'm going to do is you see how that timing is accurate? The stuff moves very quickly and ends very slowly, very nicely. Now, if I were to go 5 frames backward, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and pull this keyframe back, I've reduced the timing of this animation to 15 keyframes. Let's see how that looks. That looks even better depending on what I am trying to do. Okay. Now let's reduce it to 10 frames. I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now we have 10 frames. You can see I'm in the middle of 20 frames. 10 frames. This is 12 frames. 10 frames here. Let's see how it looks. Once again, depending on what I want to do, that might look good. And depending on what I want to do, that might not look good. Okay? If I wanted to move a body of text from one side of the screen to another, this might be too fast for somebody to look at. Okay? So now in this case, I would see that I have only, these are 10 keyframes. If you check these dots, if I zoom into these dots, you will see that I have a total of 10 dots as well. And this might be too fast. Now, in a case where I have worked on my spacing of my animation and it is now looking too fast. Now, if I change this back to linear keyframe, you see how it looks. If for any reason I work on my spacing of my animation and it looks too fast, what that should tell me immediately is that I need to increase my timing for the animation to be able to breathe. Okay? Now, if I work on the spacing of my animation and it is too slow, that means I need to reduce my timing so that it can speed up. Okay? I don't know if that makes sense. That's really just it for timing and spacing. If the animation feels too slow, because normally I could start out with a timing of 20 frames, and then when I do a certain type of easing, I feel like it is too slow. If it is too slow, that means I should reduce my timing to get it to the speed I want it to be. If it is too fast, that means I should increase my timing to get it to the speed, to get it to look the way I want it to look. Okay? So if you look at this, for instance, this is very calm. This is very fast, but at the same time, it's very calm because this is about 20-something frames. It's very calm looking. Okay? So that's the difference between timing versus spacing. Timing is you put the point A, you determine where point B is going to be. Spacing is you adjust the graph. You tell After Effects, this is how I want it to feel. If after telling After Effects, this is how I want it to feel, and it feels that way, but it looks a tad too slow, you reduce the timing. It looks too fast, you increase the timing. Basically, that's timing versus spacing. So now we are going to animate we're going to do a little animation. Okay, we're going to do a little animation right now based on what we have learned in the graph editor. So stick around. We're going to do a little animation right now. Okay, so I promised you guys were going to learn how to animate your first animation in this particular class. So what we are going to do first of all is we're going to do a little bit of designing in After Effects right now. What we want to do is we are going to pick this object. We are going to pick the rounded rectangle, click and hold, click and hold on the shape tool. You will see other options like the rounded rectangle, ellipse, or just pick the rounded rectangle and you're going to draw this like this. Okay, and you're going to have this here looking like this. Now in some cases, when you draw this, your anchor point is going to be off somewhere here like this. You don't want that to be here. You want it to be at the center of the composition. How did I do that? I picked my anchor point tool. This is the anchor point tool, pan behind anchor point tool, or you click your Y key on your keyboard. I'm on move to right now. If I click my Y key, I will change to that. Click on the anchor point. You see, it doesn't move the shape, it moves the anchor point. When you click on the anchor point, click Control, is going to snap it to any of these corners. But what you want it to snap is in the middle, and then you release it. But beyond that, you want to come to your file, come to your edit, come to your preferences, go to general, and what you want to look for is this option, center anchor point in new shape layers. Center anchor point in new shape layers. Make sure you check this, okay? So that any object that you draw, you see where the anchor point is at the beginning. Once I release it, the anchor point enters into the middle. Okay, the anchor point enters into the middle immediately. All right, so take note of that. Now we are going to come into this. We're going to rename this, click enter, and call it box 1. Let's just call this box underscore 1. Okay, box underscore 1. And under box underscore 1, we are going to open this up. We are going to, right now you see it has a rounded edge. I want it to be more rounded than that. So I'm going to come open the rectangle, open into rectangle, and you're going to see size, position, roundness under rectangle part. So I'm going to increase the roundness from 15 to like something like 54. See how that looks. Okay. Perfect. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pick my text tool. I'm going to click here and type the word smooth. I'm just going to type the word box. Click on enter 1. Now you cannot see my object very well. So this is the text tool I clicked to type, and this is my move tool. I come back here to be able to move things around. Now what I want to do is I want to make this to be black, the text to be black. How do I do that? I come over to this point and I click on character. Now if I don't have character here by default, go to Windows, come and click on character, and it's going to display. Now you see there is an option for color. I'm going to change this to black, and I'm going to move this over here. And we have box 1 on top of the shape layer. This is the shape layer, as you can see, there's star on it. This is the text layer, as you can see, there's a T on it. Okay, I'm going to select, double click on this to select it, and I'm going to increase the size, something like this. Okay, something like this. Okay, now I have these two objects, box 1 text and box 1 shape layer. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is, if you see this, you're going to see that as I'm moving box 1 away, the main box on its own, you see that box 1 stays intact, right? The box 1 text stays intact. Now I want the box 1 text to move with box 1. What I'm going to do is something called, let me check if this is still recording. What I'm going to do is something called parenting. I'm going to parent box 1 as a child of the shape layer. How do I do this? I can come to box 1 and come to parent and link. Look at this. If you cannot see this, come here, click on this button. You see this option has popped up. If you click on this third one, more options will pop up, but we don't need that just yet. So come to parent and link, and then click on none on this box 1, that's the text now. You can see the text is selected. And tell After Effects, parent it to box 1. Now, to this shape layer object. So if I move the shape layer now, you see that they are moving together. They are moving together. Okay? So now what am I going to do? I'm going to do something. I want these two shapes to come from the bottom into the screen to stay at this point. How am I going to do that? It's simple. What I'm going to do is I'm going to press my position keyframe and I'm going to click on the first keyframe and I'm going to move it down to the bottom. So this is point A. This is where we are starting. We're starting at the bottom all the way to the top. Okay. Now I'm going to move 20 keyframes using my Control Shift right arrow direction. Okay. You can also go manually if you want, but you can see I'm at 20 keyframes here. I zoomed into my timeline. What I'm going to do is either I move this, I'm on my hand tool now. For you to move your hand tool, just press your space bar on your keyboard and hold. Remember to hold and do this. It's going to move your canvas for you to see. Okay. Now what I can do is I can decide to come down here and hold it and drag it up, or I can use my position properties here to move it. Now the one on the right is up and down, the one on the left is left and right. Okay, so I can drag this one down so it goes down entirely, and then for this one I'm going to move it. I'm going to move it up like this to this point. And we have that guy in the middle. Okay? We have him right there in the middle, which is interesting. And now I'm going to press on my N key to cut my playhead to this point. And you see it's moving very slowly all the way down there. Now, that looks very, very slow, right? That looks very, very slow. Remember, timing versus spacing. It's looking slow right now. Let's adjust how the animation feels and see for ourselves. So I've easy eased my keyframe using F9. I'm going to go to my graph editor. What do I want this to feel like? I want it to be a slowdown at the beginning and a slowdown at the end. And a slowdown at the end. And a slowdown at the end. So I have some notifications on my phone. Clients. All right. So I'm going to push this to slow down. When the graph is going down, there's a slowdown. I'm going to also push this to a slowdown. Can you see how that looks? Oh my God, that looks better already. Can you see? That looks better. All right. So now we have this animation coming on screen. Box 1 comes on screen. And what do we want to do again? What we want to do is, as box 1 is here on screen at this point, yeah, we are going to duplicate. We're going to duplicate this. And what we are going to do is, how did I duplicate this? I clicked both layers and I clicked Control D on my keyboard and I duplicated. You now see we have box 2 and we have box 1 too. So these layers now are double. I'm going to click, as they are both selected, I'm going to move all of them all the way to the top. And it's going to duplicate it with the keyframes. So this one is going to come with the keyframes as well. To remove the keyframes, what I need to do is press this stopwatch button. Okay. And if I click, you see that the parenting, this box 1 here is still parented to this other one here as well. So After Effects is very smart. And I'm going to move it over here like this. So now you can see that this one is moving, but this other box is not moving. Okay, this other box is not moving. Now, first of all, what I want to do is I want to make this box. I'm going to hold my scale keyframe. I'm going to allow both of them to be on screen. I want to make this box smaller than this initial box with reasons, and you're going to see why I'm doing that. I'm going to make this one smaller, and what I'm going to call it is this box one, the text. Now, because it's parented does not mean I cannot edit the text. I can still edit the text. So I'm going to call this left enter box. Okay, your text doesn't need to be perfect. Okay, just as far as you have text on top of it, you are good to go. Don't stress yourself too much. Left box to the left, and I'm going to duplicate this again. The reason you are seeing refresh disabled, release cap locks to refresh view, is that my caps lock key is on. So once I click my cap locks key, I can see my preview again. And I'm going to pull this all the way over here as well. You see that this is also still parented. And I'm going to call this right box. Okay, so this is about to get interesting. So what I want to do here is I'm going to increase the duration of my preview to over 2 seconds. Yes. And what I want to do is these other boxes, since they are underneath this one, I want to change their color so I can identify them easily. I'm going to change their layer colors to orange. It's not going to affect anything on the screen, but you can see the dots are now orange. If I click this one, it's red, and if I click on the shape layer here, it's blue. So what I can do is I can select the two of them and say these ones should be yellow. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to push this over on top. My caps lock was on once again. Now what I want to do at this point is, when this animates into the screen, you know what? I think I want the sizes of this box to be further reduced so that the effect of what I'm going to, so this is 50 scale 50. I'm going to come to this one as well and click here and make the scale 50 as well. So they are smaller now. What I want is when this box comes on, it scales down and then these two boxes come out behind it. Okay, you get the vibe? All right, so let's do that. So let's come back to this one. This is box one. Remember the colors. The colors tells me which one because I grouped them. Over the course of the animation, you might not need to group them. You just know the layers by their names. So when it animates to this point and rests for a bit, from this point, I want it to go 20 frames, 1, 2, once again. Oh, sorry, it's not this position keyframe that I want to animate. What I want to, oh my God, I made a mistake. Okay, so let me just delete only this keyframe, select this keyframe and click delete. What I want to do is at this point, I want to click on my scale. Okay, now if I want my scale property to show with my position property, let's go back to position. If I want my scale property to show with my position property, instead of just clicking S to show the scale property, I'm going to click Shift S. It's going to add the scale property to the position property. What does this do for me? It makes me know where the position property keyframes were so that I can know where to place the scale property keyframe. So I'm going to place it here like this, and I'm going to go 2 frames, 1, 2, 20 frames rather, and I'm going to scale this back, and it's going to give the illusion of this box moving backward right now. Okay, I'm also going to select this, I'm going to ease it, and I'm going to move it back like this. Okay. Okay, you know what, let me reduce that scale, the final scale, even more. Okay. All right. Okay, I don't like the way it stays on screen for long like that before it scales down. So let me reduce let me bring the distance, the scale property keyframes closer to the position property keyframes. Okay, let me line the scale property keyframes exactly where the position property keyframes ends. Oh, that looks good. That looks good. So now if I select all the keyframes and I go into keyframe editor, the graph editor rather, you're going to see that the purple is the position keyframe as seen, and the scale is the red keyframe as seen going down. Now, if you notice, the scale keyframe is upside down, the position keyframe is the other way around. Okay, but the same principles apply. When you lay the graph down, it takes time. All right, so let's go down to the last part. Now I'm going to stand at this point, and here's what I'm going to do. These are my two boxes that I need to animate. How did I click both of them separately? I clicked here and I held on my control key and I clicked here. So I was able to select both of them. Now, if I clicked here and I held on my shift key and I clicked here, it's going to select everything in between, but my control key helps me to pick individual layers at different points of my choosing. All right, so click on the position keyframe. All right, and I am at the end of this animation. Let's come to the beginning where the box starts going backwards. So you can see this is the end of the position keyframe. This is the beginning of the scale keyframe for this box. So I'm going to press my position, and for the right box, I'm going to move it back here to be behind box 1. And for the left box, I'm going to also move it back here to be behind box 1. Now, at this point where it comes all the way to the end here, I'm going to move this box out like this. Okay. And I'm going to also move this box out like this. Can you see? So let's see how the animation looks like. Let's see how the animation looks like. See? So the keyframing on box, on left box and right box looks weird. It looks very off compared to the way that box 1 is moving. Box 1's movement looks more refined. Why can't I talk well today? Okay, so I'm going to easy ease both keyframes of left and right box. I'm going to go into the keyframe editor. You see I'm selecting both keyframes. I'm going to highlight the left one. I'm going to bump it down, and I'm going to bump it down like this. Can you see? Oh, that looks better. Can you see? Can you see? Can you see? Now the thing is, I do not want the left and right box showing the way they are showing at the beginning. So how do I make them not to show? That's very simple. I can click on all of them, all the 4 layers, and drag them here. That means over here, there's nothing visible about them. So when it is here, it's going to show, but it's going to be behind. So nobody's going to be able to see it. And then they animate themselves out. Okay? Can you see? We've already started animating something. Wow. Interesting. You're an animator now. So you can officially go change your Instagram bio and say, animator, available for work, taking clients, charging so and so amount, you know? I mean, you're an animator. Like, you can reach out to Disney right now to hire you or something, you know? So, yeah. So you can see we did that simple animation. Now, the exercise for this class is I want you to recreate this animation or something similar, anything that comes to your mind, recreate this kind of animation. And using the principles of timing versus spacing and everything I've shown you, don't exactly try to copy my animations or my keyframing or my timing and all of that. Try to make your own thing. You know, try to make your own thing and see how it looks. You know, like you can try 25 frames, you can try 15 frames, you know. It's not about you copying what I did, but, you know, just you doing your own thing. So yeah, let's see what you come up with. But I would really appreciate if you do this, because it's going to stretch your brain a lot and you're going to learn a lot trying to do this. So see you guys in the next tutorial. Have a nice day, have a nice evening, have a nice night, have a nice morning, whenever you're watching this, and see you guys on day 3. Bye for now.